The Matrix. Everyone in 1999 thought they were living in 1999, and the whole point of the movie is that they were off by about 200 years. Written and directed by the Wachowskis and released by Warner Brothers on March 31st, 1999, The Matrix cost about $63 million and went on to gross over $460 million worldwide. Thomas Anderson is a programmer who hacks under the alias Neo, and when Morpheus finally levels with him, the year isn't 1999 at all. It's closer to 2199. The world Neo has walked through his entire life is the Matrix, a neural interactive simulation built by machines to keep billions of humans docile, while their bodies are farmed for bioelectric energy. The film literalizes the reveal in the desert of the real, when Neo sees the scorched actual planet and the endless fields of pod-grown people wired into the system. That whole idea gets compressed into a single choice: the red pill or the blue pill. The moment a person consents to learn that his reality is fabricated. Inside the simulation, Agent Smith operates as a self-replicating program whose only job is to enforce the illusion and delete anyone who threatens it. The movie even handed fans a piece of vocabulary they still use: the residual self-image, the mental projection of the body a mind carries into the sim. The Matrix is the reference point every other film here gets measured against, which is exactly why it opens this list. It took simulation theory out of the philosophy seminar and dropped it into a leather coat action movie that a total stranger still recognizes in 10 seconds. Dark City. John Murdoch spends the entire film trying to reach a sunny seaside town called Shell Beach, and the horror is that Shell Beach doesn't exist, and neither, in a sense, does the city he's standing in. Directed by Alex Proyas and released in 1998, Dark City cost about $27 million and barely broke even at the box office. The nameless city is an artificial construct floating in space, built and run by the Strangers, a dying alien species that wears human corpses like clothing. Every night at midnight, the Strangers do something they call tuning, reshaping the architecture and rewriting the residents' memories, all to study what actually makes a human soul. Murdoch works out that no one can tell him the way to Shell Beach because it was never a place. It's an implanted memory. And late in the film, it turns out to be nothing more than a faded mural painted on a wall at the city's edge. When that edge finally opens, it opens onto empty space, confirming the whole world is a set. Dark City is the connoisseur's pick that ran this exact simulation reveal play a full year before The Matrix, and then got buried at the box office. The Shell Beach reveal remains one of the purest "your world is a set" moments the genre has ever put on screen. Free Guy. A cheerful bank teller named Guy notices that everyone around him wears sunglasses and robs banks for fun, and it takes him an embarrassingly long time to realize he's furniture in someone else's video game. Directed by Sean Levy and released in 2021, Free Guy stars Ryan Reynolds as a non-player character living inside Free City, an open-world online game made by a studio called Tsunami. Guy goes off script, grabs a player's sunglasses, and for the first time sees the game's heads-up display floating over his own street. A real-world player named Millie confirms the truth, that his entire reality is code, and the stakes are blunt, because the studio plans to delete Free City for a sequel, which would erase Guy and every other character with him. The sunglasses as truth goggles image makes the "your world is fabricated" reveal about as literal and visual as it gets. Total Recall. Douglas Quaid pays a company to implant the memory of a secret agent vacation to Mars, and the movie never once confirms whether he actually got out of the chair. Directed by Paul Verhoeven and released in 1990, Total Recall stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and is based on the Philip K. Dick story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. With a budget reported around $65 million, it was one of the most expensive films of its era. Quaid walks into a company called Recall to buy an implanted vacation as a spy on Mars. The procedure appears to go wrong, and seconds later he's living exactly that adventure. Here's the buried clue, though. A Recall technician mentions blue sky on Mars before the implant even starts, and the film ends with Quaid standing on a newly terraformed Mars under a blue sky, fading to white instead of the usual black. Verhoeven has said he built the ending to support both readings on purpose, comparing it to Schrödinger's cat. So the question the movie leaves you with is whether the fabricated vacation ever actually ended. That unresolved edge is exactly the kind of thing this audience lives for. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I make videos like this all the time, and a subscribe would genuinely help the channel out. Thanks. The 13th Floor. A man builds a perfect simulation of 1937 Los Angeles, and then finds a note warning him that his own 1999 is running on somebody else's hardware. Written and directed by Joseph Rusnak and produced by Roland Emmerich's Centropolis Entertainment, The 13th Floor arrived in 1999 on a budget of about $16 million and grossed roughly $18.5 million worldwide. It's based on the 1964 novel Simulacron 3 by Daniel F. Galouye. In the story, Hannon Fuller runs a company that has built a full simulation of 1937 Los Angeles, populated by people who have no idea they're programs. Fuller is murdered right after leaving a message, and his protege Douglas Hall slowly works out what the message meant, that his own 1999 Los Angeles is itself a simulation. The proof comes when Hall drives to the edge of his world, and the road ahead simply dissolves into an unfinished green wireframe grid, the literal edge of the render. The structure is nested, a simulation running inside another simulation, and by the end, Hall's consciousness crosses upward into a real world dated decades later. It's the re-engagement beat this list needed, a genuinely underseen film with one of the cleanest "you are a simulation too" gut punches ever shot. That wireframe horizon sells the whole reveal in a single image, no dialogue required. eXistenZ. David Cronenberg spends 2 hours convincing you that you finally understand which layer of the game you're in, then ends on a character begging to know if they're still inside it. Written and directed by Cronenberg and released in 1999, eXistenZ follows a game designer named Allegra Geller as she demos a biotech virtual reality game, the kind you play through organic pods plugged straight into a port in your spine. The film keeps dropping its characters between what looks like reality and what looks like the game, over and over, until the audience genuinely loses track of which is which. Then the final scene pulls the rug, revealing that everything was actually a different game entirely, one called Transcendence, and that the supposedly real characters are anti-game extremists. The last line belongs to a minor character with a gun pointed at his face, and all he asks is, "Are we still in the game?" Cronenberg refuses to answer. The nesting is deliberate, engineered so you can never confirm the ground floor exists. That unresolved final question is the whole point, and it's catnip for anyone who likes their sci-fi to keep working on them long after the credits. Source code. Coulter Stevens is told he's running a computer simulation of a doomed commuter train, and by the end, that simulation is the only place he's still alive. Directed by Duncan Jones and released in 2011, Source Code stars Jake Gyllenhaal as a soldier told the program only lets him relive the last 8 minutes of a dead man's memory to find a bomber, and that he can't change anything. Jones has said plainly that the film is really a parallel reality story, that every run branches a new timeline that keeps existing. In the final loop, Stevens stops the bombing and doesn't die, and his consciousness simply carries on living in that branch, inside another man's body. The message he manages to send confirms the branch is real, not some discarded simulation. It's the literal version of this whole premise. The thing sold as a simulation turning out to be a real world he now has to live in. The Island. Lincoln 6 Echo believes he survived a global contamination, and that winning the lottery means a trip to the last clean place left on Earth. And both of those beliefs are just marketing copy. Directed by Michael Bay and released in 2005, The Island stars Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, and it cost roughly $126 million, while earning only about $35 million at the domestic box office. The residents live inside a sealed compound, told the outside world is contaminated, and that a lottery occasionally sends lucky winners to a pristine island. Lincoln uncovers the truth, that they're all clones, referred to as agnates, grown as living organ and surrogacy insurance for wealthy sponsors, and that the island is simply the polite word for being harvested and killed. Their entire reality, the contamination, the lottery, the carefully rationed lives, is a fabricated story designed to keep the product calm. The premise was close enough to the 1979 film Parts, the Clonus horror, that its producers sued. The Island swaps a digital simulation for a social one, where the fabricated world is a story rather than a server, and that lottery equals death reveal is a genuine jolt. World on a Wire. Decades before The Matrix, a West German television movie put a scientist inside a simulation, and then revealed that the scientist was inside a simulation too. Directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, World on a Wire aired in 1973 as a two-part television miniseries on the German network ARD, and it draws from the same Daniel F. Galou novel, Simulacron 3, that would later inspire the 13th Floor. In it, a project called Simulacron runs a full simulated society of people who don't know their programs, built to forecast social and economic behavior. After the project's leader, Henry Vollmer, suddenly dies, his successor, Fred Stiller, starts noticing cracks, people quietly vanishing, small contradictions in the fabric of his world. Bit by bit, Stiller arrives at the realization that he and his entire world are themselves just another simulation, running one level up. Shot on 16mm for television, it was largely forgotten until a 2010 restoration finally brought it back. This is the deep-cut credibility entry, the trope's grandfather, doing the nested reveal in 1973, before almost anyone else had thought to try it. Avalon. A veteran gamer chases a rumor about a hidden level, and the hidden level looks suspiciously like the real world she thought she came from. Directed by Mamoru Oshii and released in 2001, Avalon is a Japanese-Polish live-action film shot in Poland, built around an illegal combat game where the black market obsession is reaching a secret level called Class Real. The protagonist, Ash, finally breaks through to Class Real, and it's rendered in full color, while her ordinary reality has always been a washed-out sepia. The film deliberately leaves it open whether Class Real is the true world or just a deeper layer of the game, and reaching it means you can no longer reset out. You're locked into the world you broke into. It's the international curveball on this list, an Oshii film where the real world is itself a suspected level, and that color versus sepia flip makes the reveal impossible to miss. Vanilla Sky. David Ames keeps waking up into a life that gets steadily more wrong until a tech support guy on a rooftop explains that he's been dreaming on ice for 150 years. Directed by Cameron Crowe and released in 2001, Vanilla Sky stars Tom Cruise and is a remake of the 1997 Spanish film Open Your Eyes. After a disfiguring car crash and, later, his own death, David's world grows glitchy and increasingly impossible to trust. A figure who calls himself tech support finally lays it out, that David signed a contract with a company called Life Extension, a cryonics outfit that froze him at the moment he took his own life. For an extra fee, David had chosen the lucid dream option, which erased the memory of his death and dropped him into a self-authored fantasy while his frozen body waited for a future cure. Everything after one specific night on the pavement was the dream, not reality. In the end, David is offered a choice: stay in the fabricated dream or wake up into the real future, and he chooses to wake. The unsettling part is that the fabricated world here was a paid consumer product, a simulation you buy. Ender's Game. Ender thinks he's passing his final training simulation by wiping out an alien homeworld, and the adults standing behind him already know the fleet was real. Directed by Gavin Hood and released in 2013, Ender's Game adapts Orson Scott Card's 1985 novel, following a child prodigy named Ender Wiggin as he's trained through harder and harder battle simulations to fight an alien species called the Formics. His final exam asks him to destroy the Formic homeworld against impossible odds, and he wins by deploying a devastating weapon. Then Colonel Graff reveals the simulation was never a simulation. Ender has been commanding the real human fleet the entire time, and he has just committed genocide. The reveal recasts all that training as a deliberate deception, engineered to make a child do what an informed adult might have refused. It's the other literal case on this list, the simulation that turns out to have been real the whole time, with real casualties. Inception. For an entire movie, you're trained to believe the dream and the real world are two clearly separate places, and then the last shot spends about 5 seconds making you doubt you ever left the dream at all. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan and released in 2010, Inception stars Leonardo DiCaprio, cost about $160 million, and grossed over $836 million worldwide. Nolan builds a world where specialists use shared dream technology to enter fabricated dreamscapes and either steal an idea or plant one. Dom Cobb carries a totem, a small spinning top, that's supposed to tell him which side of reality he's on. If it topples, he's awake. If it spins forever, he's still dreaming. His backstory is the quiet tragedy of the film, because his wife Mal became so lost in the nested dream layers that she could no longer accept the real world, and she took her own life, convinced that dying was just another way to wake up. Then comes the famous final shot. Cobb spins the top, walks away to reunite with his children, and the film cuts to black on a wobble before the top clearly falls or clearly keeps spinning. Nolan has refused, on purpose, to say whether that ending is real, which leaves the fabricated world question permanently open. And because the whole film is a dream within a dream within a dream, the characters keep discovering, layer after layer, that the world around them is a construct. Inception closes this list because its reveal never fully arrives. It hands the real versus fabricated question straight to you and then refuses to take it back, which is exactly what you want people carrying around after the video ends. If this was your kind of thing, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.